The royal palace of the Drakari Empire stood high above the burning clouds of a crimson world. Inside its golden halls, silence filled the air. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of fear. In the grand nursery, 3 tiny dragonlings lay weak and still inside shining crystal pods. Their scales had lost their color. Their little wings barely moved, and their cries were so faint they almost disappeared into the cold hum of machines. The Emperor, a tall and fierce dragon-like alien whose roar could shake mountains, now stood powerless. His golden eyes, once full of pride, were filled with worry. These were his children, the future heirs to the most powerful throne in the galaxy, and they were dying. For weeks, the greatest alien healers of the Empire had come and gone. They brought strange medicines from faraway worlds. They used machines powered by stars. They prayed to their gods and performed rituals that made the skies glow. But nothing worked. The Dragonlings continued to weaken. Every attempt ended in failure. The Emperor's anger had turned into quiet despair. His people whispered in corners that the young ones were cursed, born too weak to survive the royal bloodline. Some even said it was a sign that the Emperor's rule was ending. The air inside the palace felt heavier each day, filled with hopelessness. In a distant part of the Empire, news of the Emperor's tragedy reached the colony world Terra 9, a human settlement surrounded by alien races. There, in a small medical outpost, a human nurse named Elara Quinn read the report with wide eyes. She was known for her gentle hands and brave heart. She had healed alien children before when others were too afraid. But this was something no one had ever dared to try. The Emperor's dragonlings were sacred. No alien, no human, no creature had ever touched royal blood without permission. Yet when the call for help spread across the galaxy, Elara did something no one expected. She volunteered. The alien officials laughed at first. "A human nurse?" they said with disbelief. "What can your kind do that our greatest healers cannot?" But Elara didn't argue. She only said softly, "Sometimes, healing needs more than knowledge. It needs care." Her voice carried a quiet confidence that made even the arrogant aliens pause. And when the Emperor himself heard of her offer, he hesitated for a long time before giving a simple command. "Let her come." When Elara arrived at the royal palace, she felt hundreds of eyes following her. The air smelled of smoke and metal, and guards in silver armor watched her every step. She had never seen such a place. Glowing walls, moving energy patterns, and statues of dragons taller than towers. As she walked through the endless corridors, she could feel the weight of fear pressing down on everyone. Servants bowed with sorrowful faces. Healers whispered among themselves. No one believed she could help. To them, she was just a fragile outsider, a human from a small world who didn't belong here. But Elara didn't come for them. She came for the Dragonlings. When she entered the nursery, she froze for a moment. There, inside the glowing crystal pods, were the Emperor's children. So tiny, so fragile, and so beautiful. Their scales shimmered faintly like broken jewels. She could hear the faint sound of their breathing machines, and it broke her heart. The alien healers stood around them, tired and hopeless. One of them spoke in a low voice. "We've done everything possible. Their hearts will not last another day." Elara stepped closer, ignoring their stares. She looked down at the smallest dragonling. Its wings curled tight against its body, its little chest moving weakly. She could see tears shining in the Emperor's eyes as he stood silently behind her. For a moment, she forgot who he was, a ruler, a conqueror, a legend. He was just a father watching his children die. She knelt beside the pod and placed her hand gently against the glass. The warmth of her palm made the baby stir slightly, and she whispered softly, "You're not alone, little one." The Emperor's guards immediately stepped forward, their weapons raised. "Do not touch the royal heirs," one barked. But the Emperor raised his clawed hand to stop them. "Let her," he said, his voice deep and low. "Let her try." The alien healers watched with disbelief as Elara began to study the readings on the monitors. The machines displayed alien symbols she barely understood, yet she focused on something else. The rhythm of the dragonling's breathing, the tremble of its tiny claws, the faint flicker in its eyes. "They're not fighting the illness," she murmured. "They're scared." The healers frowned. "Scared? They are royal hatchlings. Fear is not part of their biology," one snapped. But Alara only smiled faintly. "Fear," she said quietly, "is part of every life that feels." For hours, she stayed by the Dragonlings' side, adjusting their temperature, humming a gentle tune from Earth, a lullaby her mother used to sing. The song echoed softly through the glowing room. Even the Emperor felt the strange calmness in her voice. The machines began to beep slower, steadier. The faint glow of the Dragonling scales grew just a little brighter. It wasn't a miracle yet, but it was something. For the first time in weeks, there was a spark of life. As the night deepened, Alara stood up and turned to the Emperor. "They need more than medicine, Your Majesty," she said. "They need to feel safe. They need to feel loved." The Emperor looked at her silently, his expression unreadable. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Finally, he said, "You may continue. Do whatever you must." And as Alara walked back to the Dragonlings, determination burned in her eyes. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way. She was only a human nurse in a galaxy of powerful beings. Yet maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the Emperor's children needed. The next morning, the great halls of the Drakkari Palace were alive with whispers. Everyone had heard what the human nurse had done. The guards spoke in low voices about her soft song. The healers murmured about her strange methods, and even the Emperor's advisors were filled with doubt. "She broke protocol," one hissed. "No healer touches royal blood without permission." Another shook his head. "If the Dragonlings die under her care, the Emperor will destroy her." But Alara didn't care about the rumors. She wasn't there to follow their rules. She was there to save 3 small lives. When she entered the nursery again, the lights dimmed softly around her. The air smelled faintly of medicine and warm metal. The 3 Dragonlings were still weak, but their small eyes opened slightly when she came close, like they recognized her presence. Alara studied the readings carefully. Their heartbeats were still faint, their energy levels dropping again. The alien healers had done everything science could offer, but something was still missing. She stepped closer and noticed how cold the room was, how distant the healers kept themselves from the babies. They never touched them. Every action was done by drones or robotic arms. No one had ever held the Dragonlings. She turned to one of the healers. "Why don't you comfort them?" she asked softly. The alien looked at her with disbelief. "Comfort? These are the Emperor's heirs, not animals to be cuddled. Their scales can burn through flesh. Physical contact is forbidden." Alara looked down at the Dragonlings again. Their tiny claws twitched. Their breathing came fast and weak. She could almost feel their fear, not of sickness, but of being alone. A memory flashed in her mind. A human child, sick and trembling in her arms, calming only when she held him close. On Earth, even the smallest act of touch could heal a frightened heart. She took a deep breath. "Then maybe your rules are the problem," she whispered. Before anyone could stop her, Alara removed her gloves. The healers gasped. One shouted, "You'll burn yourself alive." Another reached forward. "Stop her!" But the Emperor raised his clawed hand again, his golden eyes fixed on her. "Let her," he said in a low voice filled with curiosity. Alara's heart pounded as she slowly opened the crystal pod. A wave of warm air brushed against her face. The smallest dragonling whimpered softly, its scales shimmering weakly. Very carefully, she slid her hands beneath its tiny body and lifted it. The heat burned her skin slightly, but she didn't let go. The baby's wings fluttered once, then again, and its trembling slowed. The healers stood frozen. They expected fire, pain, or worse, but none came. Instead, the dragonling curled around Alara's arm, pressing its small head against her chest. A soft rumbling sound filled the room, a purr. The machine readings began to change immediately. Heart rate stable, breathing steady, energy rising. The Emperor stepped closer, his voice a whisper. "It responds to you," Alara smiled through the sting in her palms. "It's not responding to me," she said softly. "It's responding to kindness." For the next hour, she sat beside the pod, holding the dragonling close and humming that same earth lullaby. The other two babies, still inside their pods, began to stir restlessly, as if calling for the same warmth. Alara gently placed the first one back and reached for the second. Again, the healers tried to warn her, but she ignored them. Soon, all three dragonlings were gathered close to her, their glowing eyes blinking sleepily. Their scales began to regain their colors: faint blues, soft golds, and deep emerald greens. The Emperor watched in stunned silence. No machine, no medicine, no sacred ritual had done what this simple human touch had done in minutes. He finally understood what Alara meant when she said, "Healing needs more than knowledge." When she finally looked up at him, her voice was quiet but firm. "Your Majesty, they don't just need air or food or treatment. They need to feel connected. They need warmth, not just from the machines, but from the heart." The Emperor said nothing for a long moment. His deep gaze met hers, an unspoken understanding between two very different beings. Finally, he said, "Do whatever you must. From now on, you have my permission to care for them your way." The healers looked horrified. One of them stepped forward, trembling. "Your Majesty, she is breaking sacred law. No being, not even you, can allow such contact." The ancient codes. The Emperor's tail slammed against the floor with a thunderous crash. The room shook. "The ancient codes will not bury my children," he roared. The guards fell silent. Even the healers bowed in fear. As the sound faded, Alara continued her work quietly, whispering to the dragonlings as she cleaned their tiny scales and checked their breathing. The faint golden glow around them grew stronger. One of the babies gave a tiny hiccup and sneezed a small puff of harmless blue smoke. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the nursery. The Emperor watched, his fierce expression softening. "You may stay here, human nurse," he said finally. "From this moment, you are under my protection." When Alara left the nursery that night, she walked through the silent corridors with aching hands and a heart full of hope. Behind her, the dragonlings slept peacefully for the first time since their birth. But in the dark corners of the palace, not everyone was happy. Some alien healers watched her with jealous eyes. They had spent years studying the royal biology, and now a simple human was succeeding where they had failed. Whispered voices echoed through the shadows. "She must be stopped before she ruins everything." And as the cold moonlight poured into the palace windows, Alara had no idea that her brave act of compassion had just made her the most dangerous figure in the entire empire. The next sunrise over the Drakkari capital was a storm of golden fire, but inside the palace, another kind of storm was brewing. Word had spread across the empire faster than light. A human nurse had touched the royal dragonlings with her bare hands. Some called it a miracle. Others called it blasphemy. By morning, the Emperor's council chamber was full of shouting voices, angry and afraid. "The Emperor allows a human to break the sacred laws," one alien noble hissed, his scales flashing red with rage. "What will our enemies say? That the royal blood has been defiled." Another shouted, "No healer in history has dared to lay hands on the heirs. It is against every ancient code." The court erupted into chaos, voices echoing through the great hall like thunder. But the Emperor sat still on his throne of obsidian and gold, his claws tapping softly against the armrest. He did not speak until the room fell silent under the weight of his gaze. His voice, when it came, was calm but terrifying. "You all failed," he said slowly. "You with your science. You with your rituals. You let my children fade while arguing about rules." His golden eyes burned brighter. "And yet, a single human nurse, a creature you all mocked, gave them life." The nobles shifted nervously. No one dared to speak again. The Emperor rose from his throne, towering above them. "The human stays," he declared. "Her methods stay. Anyone who stands against this, stands against me." His tail struck the floor, sending a shockwave through the hall. The argument was over. But outside those grand doors, rebellion was already whispering. The palace healers, humiliated and bitter, gathered in secret chambers beneath the great spire. Their leader, High Medic Vareth, slammed his clawed hand against the table. "She humiliated us in front of the Emperor," he snarled. "Our centuries of learning, undone by a soft-skinned outsider with childish songs and dangerous touch." One of the younger healers spoke nervously. "But she saved the Dragonlings, didn't she? The readings show improvement." Vareth's eyes flared with hatred. "She has bewitched them. You saw the glow in their scales. It is unnatural. If we allow her to continue, the Emperor will forget his own kind." His voice turned to a hiss. "We must remind the Emperor where true power lies." That night, while the palace slept, Elara returned to the nursery. The room was quiet except for the soft breathing of the Dragonlings. They had grown stronger. Their scales now shimmered like tiny suns, and their wings twitched in their dreams. Elara smiled softly. "You're getting better, little ones?" she whispered, brushing her hand over the smallest Dragonling's snout. It made a soft sound, half purr, half chirp, and she laughed quietly. But unknown to her, shadows moved outside the glass walls. 2 alien healers crept in, carrying small silver vials filled with a dark green liquid, a mixture meant to weaken the Dragonling's energy. They poured it carefully into the nutrient system. "By dawn she'll fail," one whispered. "The Emperor will see her as the cause of their death. Order will be restored." They vanished into the shadows, leaving no trace. Hours passed. Elara dozed in her chair, exhausted. Suddenly, a sharp sound from the monitors jolted her awake. The readings dropped, heartbeat irregular, breathing unstable. Panic filled her chest. "No, no, stay with me," she cried, rushing to the controls. She checked the mixture. Something was wrong. The scent was different, bitter. Her hands trembled, but she didn't freeze. "Hold on, little ones," she whispered, grabbing a small scanner. She detected the foreign chemical immediately. "Sabotage," she muttered under her breath. She didn't know who had done it, but she knew she couldn't waste time. Quickly, she disconnected the main supply and began to mix her own formula using basic human medical packs she had brought from Terra 9. The Emperor entered just as she was working, his guards alarmed by the noise. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice booming. Elara didn't look up. "Someone poisoned the nutrient system," she said breathlessly. "But I can fix it. I just need time." The Emperor's eyes narrowed in fury. "Who dares?" "Later," Elara shouted, surprising even herself. "If we argue now, they'll die." The Emperor stepped back, watching as she worked with shaking hands, whispering encouragement to the Dragonlings as she injected her mixture into the pods. Minutes passed like hours. Then one of the Dragonlings twitched, a weak movement, but enough to make her heart race. Then another. Finally, all 3 began to breathe again, softly, evenly. The monitors stabilized. Elara slumped in relief, wiping sweat from her brow. "You're safe now," she whispered. The Emperor's voice was softer now. "You saved them again," he said. "But this act of sabotage cannot go unanswered." He turned toward his guards. "Seal the palace. Find who did this." His voice grew darker. "And bring them to me alive." Later, as dawn's first light filled the room, Elara sat beside the Dragonlings, exhausted but smiling. They stirred again when she began humming that same lullaby. The golden glow around them brightened with every note, brighter than before, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. One of the guards who had been watching whispered in awe, "She's not just healing them, she's changing them." The Emperor heard, but said nothing. Deep inside, he knew it was true. There was something in her song, in her touch, something ancient and powerful, something that science could never explain. But in the cold halls of the palace, High Medic Vareth watched from afar, his hatred growing like fire. "If the Emperor will not stop her," he whispered, "then I will." And as the music of her lullaby echoed through the corridors, a new plan of betrayal was already taking shape, one that would test not only Elara's courage, but the fate of the entire empire. The night after the attack was heavy with silence. Every guard in the palace was on alert, and the halls glowed faintly with the blue shimmer of protective shields. But inside the royal nursery, peace had returned. A soft and gentle peace that seemed to come from Alara's presence alone. The Dragonlings rested soundly in their crystal pods, their small wings twitching every now and then, glowing brighter than before. The machines beside them hummed softly in rhythm with their heartbeats. Alara sat quietly beside them, her eyes tired but calm. Her hands were wrapped in light bandages from the burns she had gotten while holding them, yet she didn't care. Her gaze was fixed on the smallest Dragonling, the one who had almost stopped breathing during the sabotage. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered gently. "All of you are." The door behind her opened with a low hiss, and the Emperor entered. His heavy steps echoed in the chamber, but his voice was softer than usual. "You should rest, human nurse," he said. "You haven't slept in 2 days." Alara turned to him and smiled faintly. "They still need me," she said. "If I sleep now, I'll worry they'll stop breathing again." The Emperor studied her for a long moment. In his entire reign, he had seen soldiers fight wars, kings rise and fall, and galaxies burn. But he had never seen anyone care the way this small human did, not for power, not for reward, but simply out of love. "You risked your life for them," he said finally. "Even after my people turned against you." Alara looked back at the Dragonlings. "They're just babies," she said softly. "They don't know about politics or rules. They only know fear, hunger, and pain. And when someone shows them kindness, they respond." She hesitated, then added, "That's the same for every living being, Your Majesty, human, alien, or dragon." The Emperor's golden eyes flickered with something strange. "Respect. Your words are simple," he said, "but they carry power." He turned to leave but paused as Alara began to hum again, the same soft melody she had sung before. It floated gently through the air like a whisper of wind. The Emperor stopped, listening. The sound was unfamiliar to his alien ears. It wasn't music like his people knew. It was something else, something that touched the heart directly. The Dragonlings stirred. Their scales began to glow with soft, pulsing light, brighter and brighter, until the room was bathed in a golden hue. Their tiny claws stretched toward the sound, and one of them let out a small cry that wasn't of pain but of joy. Then something incredible happened. The 3 Dragonlings lifted slightly off the bedding, floating in the air, their wings fluttering weakly but freely. The Emperor's eyes widened. "What is this?" he whispered. Alara stopped humming and looked at him, just as shocked. "I don't know," she said softly, "but I think they're responding to the sound, to my heartbeat." The alien healers watching from the doorway couldn't believe what they saw. The monitors spiked with strange readings, life energy levels higher than any recorded before. The Dragonling scales shimmered with new colors, bright gold and deep sapphire, forming patterns that seemed alive. One healer whispered, "This shouldn't be possible." Another replied in awe, "It's as if her voice is healing them." The Emperor stepped closer to the glowing pods. His deep voice was almost reverent. "Your song carries life," he said. Alara shook her head. "It's not the song itself. It's the feeling inside it. Love, care, hope. Maybe they can feel it." She looked at him, her expression serious. Maybe that's what they were missing all along. For a moment, even the Emperor was silent. Then he spoke softly. "You call it love. We call it spirit flame. Whatever it is, it binds life together. Perhaps humans are closer to it than we ever realized." Outside, the first light of dawn spread across the palace towers. The guards looked up, startled, as a beam of golden energy shot out from the top of the nursery dome, reaching toward the sky. Birds of fire, small energy creatures, gathered around the beam as if answering a call. It was as though the whole world was awakening to the sound of Alara's song. When the glow faded, the Dragonlings slowly drifted back down to their beds, their eyes open and bright. The smallest one let out a soft, musical chirp, and for the first time, it smiled. Not in a human way, but something close enough to make Alara's heart ache. She laughed softly through tears. "You're going to be just fine, aren't you?" The Emperor looked at her with deep wonder. "From this day forward," he said, "your method will be known as the Song of Life." He turned to the stunned healers and declared, "You will learn from her. You will study her ways. The age of cold science is over. The age of living healing begins now." The healers bowed low, but not all of them meant it. Hidden among them, High Medic Veritha's eyes burned with fury. His jealousy was now hatred beyond reason. As the Emperor left the chamber, he whispered to himself, "If her song can heal, perhaps silence can kill." That night, as Alara sat beside the sleeping Dragonlings, the air outside the palace shimmered with unease. Somewhere deep in the shadows, plans were being made. Plans that would not only threaten her life but test the Emperor's faith in humanity itself. But for now, Alara didn't know any of that. She simply smiled as the smallest Dragonling curled closer to her, resting its tiny head against her arm. The warmth between them glowed softly in the dark, a bond that no power in the galaxy could easily break. And for the first time in many years, the Emperor of the Drakari Empire walked out into the dawn feeling something he thought he had lost forever: hope. The next few days passed in quiet triumph. The Emperor's once bleak palace now pulsed with life and light. The baby Dragonlings grew stronger by the hour, and wherever Alara went, their glowing eyes followed her. Servants whispered in amazement as the little creatures tried to flap their tiny wings whenever she hummed, like they were learning to fly to the rhythm of her voice. The Emperor himself visited the nursery every morning, something he had never done before. Each time, he would watch in silence as Alara spoke softly to his children, her gentle hands moving with patience and care. The sight of the mighty ruler watching a small human nurse sing to his heirs became a symbol of hope throughout the empire. The people called her the warm voice from the stars. But where light shines bright, shadows grow darker. Deep beneath the palace, in the old council chambers that had been abandoned for centuries, voices whispered in anger. High Medic Verith stood before a group of alien nobles and healers, his expression twisted with fury. "She has poisoned the Emperor's mind," he hissed. "He calls her methods divine, but we all know they defy our sacred science. The royal bloodline will be corrupted, mixed with human emotion, with weakness." One of the nobles hesitated. "But the Dragonlings live," he said quietly. "They grow stronger every day." "Fools," Verith snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "That is not strength. It is a trap. Her song infects them. Her voice carries something unnatural. Do you not see the danger? When those creatures mature, they may no longer obey our Emperor. They will obey her." The room fell silent. Fear flickered in their eyes. Verith smiled coldly, knowing he had planted the seed of doubt. "We must end this before the Emperor binds the human to his court forever. If we act now, we can still save the Empire from her influence." "What do you suggest?" one asked. Verith leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "We make her fail in front of the Emperor. One mistake, one tragedy, and her precious song will be silenced forever." That night, Alara was preparing a new care cycle for the Dragonlings. She mixed their food herself now, refusing to trust anyone else after the sabotage. The babies chirped softly, crawling toward her when she wasn't looking. She laughed as one of them tried to bite her shoelace. "Hey," she said, tapping its nose lightly. "That's not food." The Dragonling let out a puff of golden smoke, and she giggled. "You little troublemaker." The Emperor entered then, his usual armor replaced by a simple cloak. He looked calmer. "They like you," he said, a faint smile crossing his face. "They like everyone who doesn't treat them like glass," Alara replied, gently lifting one onto her arm. "They're curious. They want to explore. You should see them when I open the window. They stare at the stars for hours." The Emperor's eyes softened. Perhaps they see their future there. He paused for a moment, then added, "You've changed more than my children, human nurse. You've changed me." Alara blinked in surprise. "Me? How?" "You taught me," he said quietly. That strength without compassion is hollow. He turned toward the nursery window, his voice low. I once conquered worlds. Now I would give them all to hear that song again. Alara smiled gently but said nothing. She didn't realize that behind the walls of the nursery, hidden cameras had been placed, installed secretly by Vareth and his conspirators. They watched her every move, recording every smile, every touch, every moment she spent near the royal heirs. Later that night, when Alara finally went to rest, Vareth and his followers entered the nursery disguised as cleaning staff. They carried small crystalline injectors filled with a glowing blue liquid, a formula meant to cause violent energy surges in the Dragonlings' hearts. When they collapse, Vareth whispered, "The Emperor will believe her song has turned deadly." They approached the pods carefully, but the youngest Dragonling stirred. His golden eyes flicked open, sensing danger. It let out a low growl, not loud, but enough to alert the others. Within seconds, all 3 Dragonlings began to glow fiercely. The air filled with a humming sound, like music made of light. Vareth froze, startled. What? A burst of golden energy exploded from the smallest Dragonling, throwing the intruders backward. The alarms blared through the palace. Guards rushed in. The Emperor himself appeared moments later, his cloak whipping behind him like a storm. "What is this?" he demanded. His eyes landed on the scattered vials and the unconscious saboteurs. Alara came running from her quarters, breathless and confused. "What happened?" The Emperor turned to her, his voice hard but not accusing. "It seems there are those who still doubt you." He looked at the Dragonlings, who now surrounded Alara protectively, their small bodies glowing with faint flames. "But my children do not." The guards dragged Vareth and his accomplices forward. The High Medic's face was full of defiance. "You're blind, Emperor," he spat. "The human has enchanted them. Even now, you can't see how she controls them with her song." Alara stared at him, shocked. "Control them? I don't control anything. I just—" "Silence!" the Emperor roared. The entire room trembled. "You accuse without proof. You poison without reason. You betray your Emperor." His gaze turned colder than the void. "For this, there can be no mercy." He raised his clawed hand, and in a flash of energy, Vareth and his followers vanished, exiled to the dark corners of the galaxy. When the chamber finally quieted, the Emperor turned to Alara. "You have enemies," he said softly, "but also, you have protectors now." He looked down at his Dragonlings, who were still gathered around her, their scales glowing with warm light. "They are bound to you, Alara, and through them, so is this empire." Alara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She looked down at the Dragonlings, who nuzzled against her hand with innocent trust. "I'll protect them," she said quietly. "No matter what." The Emperor nodded once. "Then you protect more than my children, human nurse," he said. "You protect the future of our kind." Outside the palace, the night sky shimmered with quiet light, but somewhere far beyond the stars, the exiled traitors whispered their oaths of revenge. The battle for the Emperor's heirs was not over yet. Days passed after the attack, but peace never truly returned to the Emperor's palace. The halls were calm on the surface, yet every guard, every servant, every wall seemed to hold its breath. Whispers followed Alara wherever she went, some filled with awe, others with quiet fear. She didn't blame them. She knew what they had seen that night. The Dragonlings glowing, protecting her, moving as if her heartbeat was their command. Alara tried to stay focused on her duty. She spent her mornings caring for the Dragonlings, her afternoons teaching them to control their small bursts of flame. They were growing fast, their wings stronger, their scales shining like molten gold. The smallest one, whom she secretly called Spark, had begun to imitate her laugh. Whenever she chuckled, it made a sound that was somewhere between a chirp and a giggle. Still, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing. Not just in them, but in her. Every time she sang to them, the light from their scales grew brighter, and she could feel warmth in her chest, as if her own heart was answering their song. She started dreaming at night, dreams filled with fire, with wings, with ancient voices whispering her name. One evening, as she was humming softly, the Emperor entered the nursery quietly. His armor gleamed under the amber light. For a moment, he just stood there, watching her. "They respond to you more each day," he said finally. "It is as if you are part of them." Alara turned, startled. "Part of them? No, I'm just someone who cares." The Emperor tilted his head slightly. "Caring is not a small thing. You have done what none of our greatest healers could. You have given them life, and perhaps something even greater." Before Alara could reply, a sudden tremor ran through the floor. The Dragonlings let out sharp cries, their scales flickering red instead of gold. The palace lights dimmed. Somewhere distant, alarms began to blare. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "The energy core," he said. "It's being tampered with." They rushed through the corridors, guards joining them as red lights flashed overhead. When they reached the control chamber, the scene before them froze everyone in place. The same exiled medics, Varitha's followers, had returned through hidden tunnels, bringing with them stolen alien technology. They had attached strange crystal rods to the palace's power conduits, draining its energy into a swirling orb of unstable light. Varith himself was not there, but his voice echoed through a communicator. "Did you really think exile would stop me, Emperor? I will show the galaxy that your trust in a human was your downfall." The orb pulsed violently. Sparks flew. The Emperor shouted orders to seal the chamber, but the energy was already spreading. "If it explodes," one guard shouted, "the entire palace will burn." Alara's eyes went wide. "Wait, it's not just energy," she said suddenly. "It's feeding off life. The Dragonlings. They can feel it." Back in the nursery, the Dragonlings cried out in fear. Their scales flared crimson, wings trembling as if something was pulling at their hearts. Without thinking, Alara ran toward them. The Emperor followed close behind, shouting for her to stop, but she didn't listen. When she reached the nursery, the air was thick with heat and light. The Dragonlings huddled together, sparks flying from their scales. Alara could feel their pain, like fire crawling under her skin. She fell to her knees beside them. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here. I won't let it take you." Then, without fully understanding why, she began to sing. Her voice was soft at first, trembling, human, fragile. But as she continued, the air around her shimmered. The song deepened, rising from her heart like a living flame. The Dragonlings lifted their heads, their eyes glowing gold again. Together, their voices joined hers. Not in words, but in sound, in pure energy. A beam of light shot upward from the nursery, piercing the palace ceiling and spreading through every corridor. The Emperor shielded his eyes, feeling the warmth wash over him. The unstable orb in the control chamber cracked, and then shattered, dissolving into harmless dust. When the light finally faded, Alara was on the floor, exhausted. The Dragonlings surrounded her, their small wings folded protectively around her body. The Emperor rushed to her side. "Alara, are you?" She opened her eyes slowly, smiling weakly. "I'm fine, I think." "You saved us all," he said, his voice almost breaking. "Again." Alara shook her head. "No, we did. Me and them. They shared their fire with me, and I gave it back." She looked at the Dragonlings, their golden glow soft and calm now. "We're connected somehow. I can feel their hearts." The Emperor stood silently for a long time. Then he extended his hand toward her. "You are no longer just a nurse," he said. "You are the guardian of the flame, the one who stands between life and destruction." Alara stared at him, unsure what to say. "Guardian," he nodded. "The title belongs to you now, and as long as you breathe, this empire will never fall." The Dragonlings let out soft coos, pressing against her arms. Alara smiled and whispered, "Then let's protect it together." Far away, across the dark stars, Varith watched through his communicator screen, his expression full of cold rage. "So she survived," he muttered. Then the next fire will not come from the palace. It will come from the skies. He turned toward a fleet of shadowy ships, their engines glowing red. Let the war begin. The next dawn came not with peace, but with fire. From the edge of the Empire's sky, black ships emerged like shadows tearing through the morning light. They moved in silence, cloaked in energy fields that shimmered like oil. Every watcher in the palace towers knew who they belonged to. Vareth had returned. Inside the royal hall, alarms screamed. Commanders shouted for defense shields to rise. But the attack came faster than anyone expected. A massive energy blast hit the outer walls, shaking the entire palace. Cracks spread through marble floors, and flames licked the sky above the Emperor's garden. Alara ran toward the nursery, her heart pounding. The Dragonlings were crying again, their small bodies glowing gold, their wings trembling with fear. The Emperor followed, sword in hand, his armor glowing like molten steel. "They're coming for them," Alara said breathlessly. "Vareth wants the Dragonlings. He wants to use them as weapons." The Emperor nodded grimly. "Then he will have to go through both of us." The sky turned crimson as Vareth's voice echoed through every comlink in the palace. "You should have let me finish what I started, Emperor. Now your empire will burn, and your human pet will watch it fall." Alara clenched her fists. "He's not after the empire," she whispered. "He's after their fire." The Dragonlings stirred, their eyes glowing brighter. One by one, they spread their wings, not weak or trembling now, but strong and alive with energy. The smallest one, Spark, looked up at Alara and chirped. She felt something inside her heart respond. The same warmth, the same power she had felt when she sang before. "Alara?" the Emperor said, voice low. "Can you still connect with them?" She nodded. "I think so, but I don't know what will happen." "Then trust it," he said softly. "You've trusted your heart this far." Outside, the palace shields broke. Vareth's ships rained fire, and explosions filled the horizon. Soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. The Emperor looked at the sky, then at Alara, and made a decision that would change everything. "Take them," he said. "Take the Dragonlings and fly. You are their guardian, and their hope." Alara's eyes widened. "Fly? But how?" Before he could answer, the Dragonlings surrounded her, their wings glowing like suns. The floor beneath her feet began to hum. Light burst upward, swirling around her body. She gasped. The warmth filled her again, but this time it didn't stop. The air rippled, and wings of golden fire appeared on her back. The Emperor stepped back, awe in his eyes. "By the stars, you are part of them now." The Dragonlings screeched together, a sound both beautiful and thunderous. The walls around them cracked, and with a single burst of energy, they shot into the sky, Alara flying at their center, wings blazing, surrounded by golden trails of light. The Black Fleet opened fire immediately, lasers slicing through the air. But Alara's wings deflected them, burning the beams into harmless sparks. The Dragonlings followed her lead, weaving through enemy ships like living comets. Each one released bursts of golden flame that shattered the dark vessels in midair. From the ground, soldiers and citizens watched in stunned silence. The sky had become a battlefield of light and darkness, and in the center of it all, one human and 3 young dragons fought like a legend come to life. Alara guided them higher and higher until she spotted Vareth's main ship, a colossal dreadnought hovering above the clouds. She could see him standing at the viewing deck, his face pale with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "She merged with them." Alara's voice echoed through the comms, calm and fierce. "You wanted their power, Vareth, but power without love destroys itself." Then she raised her hand, and the Dragonlings unleashed a final blast. A storm of fire and light so pure it burned through the dreadnought's shields. The explosion painted the sky gold and white. When it cleared, Vareth's fleet was gone. The golden light faded slowly. Alara and the Dragonlings floated gently back to the palace courtyard, landing among the stunned soldiers. The Emperor stepped forward, his eyes full of pride. You have done what even our ancestors could not, he said softly. You saved not just my children, but the heart of this empire. Alara smiled tiredly. I didn't do it alone. They did it with me. She looked at the Dragonlings, who chirped happily and curled around her feet. They'll grow stronger now, and wiser. The Emperor placed his hand over his chest in a gesture of honor. You are one of us now, Guardian of Flame. Alara looked up at the brightening sky. The dawn had returned, real and warm this time. No, she said softly. I'm one of both worlds now, human and dragon. And maybe that's what the universe needed all along. The Emperor smiled. Then may both worlds remember your song. The crowd below began to cheer, a sound of hope that echoed through every corner of the empire. And as the sun rose behind them, Alara stood tall among the golden dragons, her wings folding gently as the fires of war finally faded away. And that was every alien healer failed the Emperor's Dragonlings, until one human nurse broke the rules. A story of courage, love, and the strength that comes from kindness, even in the coldest corners of the galaxy. If you felt the fire of this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more HFY tales full of heart, hope, and humanity. Stay strong, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the smallest light can change the whole universe.